Tropical Storm Beryl is strengthening in the central Atlantic basin. I'm Mike Naso from the Tropical Video Update page here on YouTube with the latest on Beryl as of 5 p.m. Eastern Time from the National Hurricane Center on this 5th day of July. Still very early in the Atlantic hurricane season, and as I'm sure you're aware, all indications are that it might be a very slow hurricane season. We're seeing a lot of anomalously cool water out there, but that has not stopped Beryl, which has broken off of the intertropical convergence zone and is currently sitting at 10.3 north, 42.8 west, with 50-mile-an-hour winds, moving west very quickly at 16, and the future and even the current intensity is a little bit uncertain because we don't have an airplane out there. We will in the next day or two. However, it does appear to be a strengthening tropical storm, and it is forecast to become a hurricane, Category 1 hurricane, but then quickly weaken and open into a tropical wave by the time the work week begins, just as it comes into contact with the leeward or windward islands. So again, it could be a little bit on the northern edge of this cone or the southern edge, but nonetheless expected to accelerate west underneath a high pressure ridge and weaken due to very unfavorable conditions. Nevertheless, you can see the computer models do continue whatever's left of Beryl in a westward direction, and as I've learned many times tracking hurricanes in July, you have to watch to see if anything happens down the road in the Caribbean and the Gulf. My worst fear with this storm wouldn't be necessarily for the islands. It would be, does whatever remains of Beryl come back later on to cause havoc of some type or another, because remember Claudette in 2003, very weak in July throughout the entire Caribbean, ends up becoming a 90-mile-an-hour hurricane in Texas. Port O'Connor, slam dunk, right over the top of it. So sometimes you want to keep an eye on these storms, as you do every storm, and just because it could be a quiet hurricane season doesn't mean we won't get a big storm. 92 is the best example. We only had 6 or 7 storms. One of them was a Category 5 hurricane into South Florida. There's the visible satellite imagery of Beryl, and you can see we had an I-type feature which has since kind of faded right in here. You can see that it popped it out. However, since then it seems to be kind of fading as the sun goes down. Nevertheless, you can see a lot of stable and dry air around the system, but it has a pretty moist envelope within it, and it's small, and small systems can spin up or down very quickly. You can see from afar, this is a pretty cool imagery here of the infrared. There's our system, and very, very tiny as it continues to spin towards the west, but you can see these clouds here, the dry and stable air, the Saharan air layer coming off of Africa has been tremendous so far in the last few weeks, and I'm very surprised we got any Cape Verde activity, especially this early. So whether that's an indication that we're going to have a lot more than we think later this year remains to be seen. Nevertheless, there's Beryl moving on towards the west as of right now. Now again, even though it's expected to become a hurricane by the Hurricane Center, the probability of decent tropical storm force wind should end because it's expected to open up into a wave, but that does not mean you can't have strong gusty winds. We had a wave come through the southern windwards 2 days ago with pretty gusty winds. So whatever's left of Beryl will probably still have some impact in areas of Guadeloupe, Martinique, Dominica. You guys keep an eye out. It's not a Maria by any sense of the imagination, or an Irma, but nevertheless, it is a system we're going to have to keep an eye out for. So we're going to have to keep an eye on this because, you know, regardless, heavy rainfall and winds are possible for the islands. So you got to watch it. I mean, it's still a tropical storm, and it will be a hurricane probably. You can see right now Beryl is in a very favorable environment, very low wind shear, very impressive for this time of year. But look at this wind shear cutting up right into the middle of it, and by the time it's approaching the islands, it's going to get gutted pretty bad. Now, if somehow it survives, maybe down the road there might be something in the Gulf or the Caribbean. That's why I get nervous with these systems. But the chances are it might just fully disintegrate. You can see that even better. Look at these wind shear values, 30 knots. Right now it's got this little safe harbor here. So Small systems can spin up and down very quickly, and that's why Beryl appears to be spinning up very quickly. And it could even be approaching hurricane strength if we're being honest. It's looking like it had sort of an eye wall forming there, at least in the mid levels. Definitely a tight inner core, and those are susceptible to big intensity changes. So we're going to keep an eye on Beryl. Hurricane season 2018, still kind of an unknown quantity here. We don't know if we're going to be dealing with an active season, an inactive season, an average season. We're going to have a slow season with a lot of strong storms. Are we going to have a season like 2013 with very weak storms? We just don't know. And that's why you got to stay tuned. I'm Mike Naso. I'll see you guys next time.